No, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our workshop this morning. We're, we'll be discussing modems, routers, and Wi-Fi. And this is a topic that's sort of dear to my heart. And I got involved in this because of some of the difficulties I've had over the years. And so we're going to take what some might say a deep dive into some of this material. So I encourage you to take notes and uh, write them down and ask questions. I by no means consider myself an authority on this. I'm sure some of the other people in the audience might have other ideas. So I'd like to hear those ideas so that we can share and get an idea of what uh, using modems, routing, and Wi-Fi is about. Some of you probably have routers that are modems that have and routers that have been provided by your provider. Um, in my opinion, you don't have to keep those. You can turn those back in and purchase your own, as long as you have some knowledge of what you want to do and how you want to do it. So we'll start with a little bit of the of historical background, as I say, the early days, and probably a lot of you will remember that, is that the modem hurled a new age of communications and played a major role in the explosion of the internet. They were in modems were in actually teletype was in action in teletype services since the 1920s. They sent telegrams and cablegrams via teletype. The serial RS-232 standard was developed and used for teletype machines, which could communicate with each other over phone lines. Early teletypes would be physically connected to its modem, working at 110 BPS, which is bits per second, via an RS-232 connection, and the modems could call each other to establish a remote connection between the teletypes. What one typed at a teletype or had saved on a punch paper tape could be printed on a remote teletype located far away. There were no computers involved. There's a picture. So in the early 1950s, AT&T developed the first commercial mass-produced computer modems. They then called a digital subset to link semi-automatic ground environment computers across the United States. Those communicated at 110 bits per second. Since then, the term has been broadened to describe a variety of devices that to perform modulation, demodulation, or encoding, decoding in its most fundamental sense. And how many of you remember the acoustic couplers? One of the most iconic aspects of the early days of the internet is probably the series of sound, a dial-up modem seeking connection. It sounded something like, that's not a good interpretation, but I think you understand if you kind of remember that. There's a little sound clip, which I have included here. And when you get the final issue of this, I encourage you to click on that and you'll see what I mean. It was a joke about the sound in the Muppets movie in 2012, where our character names the 80s robot tries to connect to the internet and all the other Muppets can't stand the sound. Internet worked over phone lines, however. When using the internet, it wasn't possible to call or receive calls. My mother would shout, "Are you interneting?" And I would like to make a call. And it got so bad after I moved from my parents' house, I had I had got a modem and had I would get on the internet, and my parents would be trying to call me, and they never could get me because the line was always busy, which actually forced me to get the second line, dedicated line for my internet. The Hayes Smart Modem. In the early days, modems were clunky affairs with acoustic couplers and the need to dial the phone numbers yourself. The Hayes 300 baud smart modem, introduced in 1981, changed the market forever. It had the ability to plug directly into the phone system and could dial numbers directly, as well as answers calls automatically. Despite its price, these features made the smart modem attractive to BBS operators known as sysops. Unfortunately for Hayes, a lot of other manufacturers liked the smart modem's features. They duplicated them on their devices that sold for a fraction of the cost. Soon, a number of the Hayes compatible modems popped up, eroding Hayes's original market. Hayes managed to hang on until the early 90s, and then it filed for Chapter 11. However, the name is still in use. There's always been a need for speed. The speed of modems continued to get faster and faster. The first modems as analog devices were 300 bits per second, then 1200 bits per second, 9600, 14.4, 28K, and 56K. I think when I started out, I had a 14K. I then upgraded to a 28 and ultimately ended up with a 56. And I thought I was in high cotton at that time. But advances in echo cancellation and noise reduction technology helped make all of this possible. At the start of the 90s, the internet was making its way from universities and research labs into public consciousness, which also provided demands for more, better, and faster modems. Instead of an add-on, they became standard equipment on new PCs. But the fastest dial-up modems were still not fast enough. With the explosion of the World Wide Web, users wanted to surf even faster. They turned to services like cable and DSL, which provided faster broadband access. However, DSL and cable modems weren't strictly modems in the traditional sense, as they had a completely digital signal path. The growth of the internet actually made the popularity of mobile computing, which led to the growth of wireless technology, including Wi-Fi. Of modern devices, Wi-Fi might be the closest to the traditional modem, as it encodes data into radio waves to turn radio waves back into data. Most people in North America use broadband these days, while only 3% still use dial-up. The way we access the internet also changed as more people logged on with smartphones or other mobile devices, often bypassing the traditional PC. The popularity of mobile computing led to the growth of wireless technology, including Wi-Fi. Of the modern devices, Wi-Fi might be the closest to, might be the closest I'm sorry, I went over that again. So, but to finish up, even with all the changes we've seen, it's always important to remember that we just didn't wake up one day and have internet. Looking back to see where we've been is a way to appreciate how far we've come and perhaps how far we still have to go. Bulletin boards. For many people in the 80s and the early 90s, the primary reasons to get a modem was to access bulletin board systems, or what they refer to as BBSs. While it's fashionable these days to describe past online media as the precursor to social networking services like Facebook, there are definite similarities. They offer users a forum for posting and replying to public messages, a kind of email, and often games. In contrast to modern social networking services, BBSs were almost exclusively local. Many computer clubs had a BBS. In 1978, Ward Christensen and Randy Seuss created the first public BBS, taking advantage of a blizzard in their hometown of Chicago to build it. The idea quickly spread across the country and around the world. For an entertaining look at BBS culture through the eyes of the people who lived through its heyday, you should look at Jason Scott's excellent BBS the Documentary. Today, no one uses dumb terminals or terminal emulators to connect to an individual computer. The internet lets us connect to any machine in the world via the internet service provider, or ISP, with your modem routing TCP/IP packets between you and your ISP via PPP or point-to-point protocol. TCP/IP dictates how information should be packaged, turned into bundles of information called packets, sent and received, and how to get to its destination. The same process occurs to get data from the ISP to your computer. So there are different types of modems, and we're going to talk about those. One is a DSL modem. When you connect to the internet, you might connect through a regular modem, through your local area network connection in your office, through a cable modem, or through a digital subscriber line, DSL connection. DSL is a high-speed connection that uses the same wires as a regular telephone line. You can leave your internet connection open and still use the phone line for voice calls. A cable modem, on the other hand, uses your TV cable to get a high-speed connection to the internet. It operates over coax cable TV lines and provides high-speed internet access. Since cable modems offer an always-on connection and fast data transfer rates, they are considered broadband devices. So here's a picture of a cable modem, and these are commercially available. You can go to your local Best Buy and purchase one of these, and with Cox, Spectrum, and Infinity. So it's easy to acquire one, and you can then return the one that the cable company has provided you. A lot of the times, what we will show here is that they have what is referred to as a gateway modem, and that's one that both has the router and the modem in one package. Where in the cases we're talking here, we're talking about separating the two, having a separate modem and a separate router. So you might want to mark that down, and we'll answer any questions you might have at the end of the presentation. But to set up the cable internet connection is relatively simple. There's some detailed drawings here, which will be part of this presentation, but you want to plug in your cable modem into your computer. Make sure the computer is near a wall socket. Plug the cable modem into the wall socket. Plug in the cable modem's power cord. Most modems don't have an on and off switch. Plugging and unplugging them is how you turn them on and off. When the cable modem is turned on, it has to go through a boot up process. You can tell the process is done when most of the lights have turned on and stopped blinking. There's usually one light that will keep blinking, so keep that in mind. But for the most part, most of them will be, they all will be solid, except the one that is sending data packets, sending and receiving data packets. And that's what the blinking light refers to. So it usually takes about 30 to 60 seconds for a modem to finish turning on. If you purchase a new modem, you'll need to call your ISP and give them information about your modem. Otherwise, they won't recognize it as being associated with your account. And they're very cooperative. You just call them and tell them that you have a modem. They'll ask you for some information, which you'll find on the bottom of the modem. And just give that to them, and they will then register your device. So what you need to do that is the serial number and the MAC address, which both to be printed on the bottom or the side of the modem. And then after you do that, you want to test your internet connection. You can open a web browser and go to a website that you haven't been to before. If you go to a website you've been to recently, your browser may load it from its cache. So you want to do a completely different one. If the website loads, then you're connected to the internet. If not, complete the rest of just repeat those steps. So you can, testing your connection is not limited to web browsers. You can use any other program that requires internet. Searching for something using a search engine is a good way to do this. Now, DSL modems are a little different animals. And here's the ones that most of the most of the providers that we're currently we know about, or at least popular, I should say, don't use DSL modems. But there is one company that does, called CenturyLink. But if your company is not, your provider is not listed, you can contact your service provider and they can give you the information as to what modem would be compatible with their system. But here again, the steps are pretty much similar. You're going to plug the DSL modem into your computer and make sure your computer is near a wall cable socket. Plug in the DSL modem to the wall cable socket. Plug in the power cord. Again, it will not have an on and off switch. Plugging and unplugging is the way you turn them off and on. When the modem is turned on, it will go through a boot process, and you can tell the process again is done when all the lights have turned on and stopped blinking. However, as I said before, there's probably going to be one that will keep blinking, and that's the one that will be sending and receiving data packets. Time frame is the same, about 30 to 60 seconds. And again, if you've purchased a new modem, you'll need to call your DSL ISP to associate your modem with your ISP account, username, and password. If you don't know what these are, you'll need to call your ISP to get them. And these people will be very accommodating, really, in helping you get set up. And then you're going to log in to your administrative screen, open a web browser. In the address field, you type the modem's IP address in this case, and it's often printed on the modem itself. If not, it'll be in the user's manual. As you see there, 192.168.0.1. That may not necessarily be the one that's associated with your modem, but it'll be one that looks very similar to that. Again, those are the common addresses. 0.1 or 1.1. Those are common addresses. And here you want to enter your DSL account, username, and password. Once you're connected to the modem's administration screen, look for PPPoE. That's the protocol. Enter your DSL account, username, and password in those fields. Your username is usually an email address. If you don't know your account username, contact your DSL ISP. When the setup is complete, you want to save your settings. The internet light on your modem should turn green to indicate you're online. Again, you want to test your internet connection, opening in a web browser and going to a website that you haven't been before. Again, keep in mind, if you go to a website you've been to recently, your browser may load it from memory or, as I said before, cache. If the website loads, then you're connected. If not, complete the rest of the steps. By searching for something using a search engine is a good way to do this. So that is what you need to get started on the modem end. And now we're going to talk about routers. Computer routers have existed since the early days of the internet, even though many people think it's newer technology. Without a router, the internet couldn't exist. Traditional routers are devices that connect different computer networks. Traditional routers are devices that connect different computer networks together. A router is also capable of connecting a computer to multiple networks, referred to as bridging. Wireless routers are hardware devices that internet service providers, ISP, use to connect you to their cable or DSL internet network. They are sometimes referred to as wireless local area networks, WLAN, and can function as a wireless access point and a traditional router. Another type of router is called gaming router, and they are Wi-Fi devices that give priority to multiplayer online games when given a list of gaming sites URL. These routers provide a higher quality of service for transmission to and from those URLs. Another type of router is called a mesh router, and they're whole home Wi-Fi systems consisting of a main router that connects directly to your modem and a series of satellite modem modules or nodes placed around your house for full Wi-Fi coverage. We're going to talk about those later in the presentation in some detail. They are all part of a single wireless network and share the same SSID and password, unlike traditional Wi-Fi routers. So today, with almost every house now having a broadband connection, the evolution of Wi-Fi routers are becoming more popular. Most devices on the market, such as smartphones, computers, lights, doorbells, locks, some home appliances are equipped to use Wi-Fi. Though Wi-Fi has become an integral part of our routine, most of us do not know much about Wi-Fi technology. So with the history of evolution of Wi-Fi routers, it's fascinating. And an earlier form of Wi-Fi has been in existence since 1971. Apparently, Aloha Net accounted for connecting the Hawaiian Islands with the aid of a wireless network asset. Aloha Net and Aloha Protocol are early forerunners to the concept of Ethernet, which later transcends into the IEEE 802.11 Internet protocols. So here's a typical router, and this is a wireless router, and you want to look for, if you're in the market for purchasing a router, you want to look for one that supports the latest standards. This says 802.11 AC. There's also one that's called AX, which we'll talk about, for maximum coverage and speed. Antennas, when it comes to the quality of the antenna is much better than the quantity. So you might see some routers that have 6 antennas, where others have 2. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the one with the 6 is better than the one with the 2. It just depends on how the manufacturer has applied their technology. And some wireless routers have no antennas at all. So that's not really a gauge of what you're getting. Of course, security is important. WPA2 is the most secure network protocol, and that's moving to WPA3. I didn't discuss that in our discussion, but WPA3 is still, I would say, kind of experimental, because all devices do not connect to that protocol very well. So it's still some time out before you'll see some devices actually support that. But WPA2 is the one that is available and the most secure, that is usable. Advertised speeds are usually theoretical maximums. Actual speeds depends on the variety of factors in your home. And then, of course, frequency channels. Dual band router supports more devices and activities like Netflix, binging. So when you're setting up your router, you want to look at a couple factors. Placement and setup should be considered where you place your router. Finding an open space towards the center of your residence is the best way to ensure optimal coverage. Although theoretically that's not always possible, but if you can get to the closest to the center of your house, the better off you are as far as getting a better coverage. You want to look out for walls and floors that might impede Wi-Fi signals. So the more obstructions you have between your devices and your router, the weaker and potentially slower the signal will be. You want to try to avoid proximity with large metal, glass, brick, or concrete objects. Wi-Fi mesh routers get around this problem by letting you place an attractively designed node wherever coverage is the weakest. But for those working with standard routers or even wireless range extenders, this will require some patience and testing to see where your optimal placement areas are. Particularly if you're using an extender, you'll want to experiment the placement of those. So once you get it set up, then move it to the furthest part of your home and see if you can still get, if that improves your connectivity. And then just kind of gradually work back towards the router. We'll talk about a little bit more of that later. So when you're setting up the router, you want to start this process by connecting your router to your modem. For this, you'll need an Ethernet cable, which you'll want to plug into the your WAN, wide area network port on your router's rear face. And it's usually looks different from router to router, but it usually has a distinct color from the other ports to be labeled WAN, internet, or something similar, as you can see in our little picture here. Most routers come with some kind of administrative website so you can access by typing your IP address into your favorite web browser and entering your logon and password, which you change from the admin or admin password, right? Keep that in mind. If you're lucky to have a smarter router, that's a bit easier to configure via an app. But most people and their older non-mesh Wi-Fi gear are probably stuck with a website. Unless the manufacturer has a built-in easy mode into the experience, a router's admin page can feel overwhelming at first glance, especially if you're not used to too much of the terminology you'll find. Our goal today is to help you get your router's most important features set up and explain all the other details you ought to know about. So the first step to get your network up and running will be set up a username and password. If you happen to have a pre-owned router, the username and password can be reset to factory defaults by holding a reset button somewhere on the router, usually on the back. And it'll be a red button that says, of course, reset. Often these defaults are something like admin and admin, which would be a hacker, which every would-be hacker knows. So make sure to change those right away. Be sure to use a secure password that includes a mix of uppercase and lowercase numbers, letters, and symbols. And I would suggest try and make it something that's complex, but try not to make it too long, because if you're going to be using any kind of wireless device that you have to put in that information to get your Wi-Fi connected, it can be a real pain. So don't make it, 26 letters or characters. You'll be fighting that constantly. But anyway, once you're there, the first thing you want to do is select an SSID. And you want to choose whatever name you want if it's your wireless network. In my case, I call my network Nice Maple. You'll either be asked to use one SSID that will cover all your wireless networks, and your router will decide which devices connect to the 2.4 gigahertz or the 5 gigahertz, or you'll be able to set separate names for each wireless network you run on each band. One thing you can do to get around that, you can have, say for instance, Nice Maple 2.4 gigahertz, Nice Maple 5 gigahertz. The latter is better because it's good to know what you're connecting to, but plenty of people go with the former for just the extra convenience. In other words, they just use the one name and let the router decide which band it will connect to for that particular device. But if you want to know exactly which one is which, I would just add the suffix of 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz to your SSID. And the thing, it may seem trivial that you're actually, it may seem trivial. There are actually a few things you need to know about naming your router. To start, the name of your router and the wireless network are different. Naming your wireless network is really naming the service set identifier, which is SSID, that the router broadcasts. What you select on your computer when you want to connect to your Wi-Fi and get online. If you're given the option to change it, your router's name or host name is how it identifies itself to other devices on the network. So you might see the name of your router might be the brand. It might be just say Netgear. That's the name of the router. But the SSID would be Nice Maple. And that would be the one that you would see on your list of networks you can connect to. So the SSIDs are super important. Router name, not so much. Give each network a solid password, and that's all you need to do to get the Wi-Fi working. However, it is possible your router might have a few more options to pick from or an advanced mode. You can see here in this page, it has a link that says advanced settings, and you can click on that, and that will take you into the a little bit more in depth of what your router is capable of doing. So when the username and password is set, you can proceed to configure your router settings. As with cooking a dinner, there's no right way to install a router, and every model is likely to have its own unique steps depending on its features. Because of this, trying to describe every possible configuration path here would be exhausting and pointless. So the thing that you need to do is look at your router's manual for the specifics. That said, we do have a few points of advice. First of all, if it has an easy setup wizard, use that. Most routers provide some form of setup routine that asks for a little more than the SSID and password. If in doubt, start with this. The SSD is your router's Wi-Fi name. It might be something like ASUS or Netgear out of the box, but feel free to change this to something creative like FBI surveillance van. This utility only gets you as far as the set of blinking green lights, but even for those looking to go beyond that stage, you need to get there first. Follow the router's documentation using its own set of utilities is always the shortest path to that destination. When in doubt, let the router do it. Auto configuration tools are your friend. For example, while you can certainly go to the trouble of building your own internet IP address range and assigning static addresses to all of your devices by hand, but simply checking the dynamic host configuration protocol box in your router setting will take care of that immediately, since this is a protocol that automatically assigns IP addresses to those devices. The lesson here is that just because you can change something doesn't mean you should. At least during the setup and early stages, go with the auto settings as much as possible. On the client device side, all other things being equal, 5 gigahertz connections will provide better performance at short ranges than 2.4 gigahertz. This is because 5 gigahertz, while somewhat faster, can't travel as far or transmit through some objects due to that band's shorter wavelength. Another thing to remember is that the 2.4 gigahertz band tends to have more congestion and fewer channel options. If you want to keep using the 2.0 gigahertz, you want to experiment with channel selection. Auto does a decent job by hopping around the channel options and finding the best one. But if you're struggling with a client connection, try manually setting the channel to 1 or 11. The 2.4 gigahertz band has a total of 11 channels that you can switch between to avoid interference, with channel 6 usually being the default. When you select a given channel, there's usually some signal spillover. So selecting channel 2, for example, will often spill traffic onto channels 1 and 3. Thus, switching to the extremes of 1 or 11, the farthest point from the default 6, can sometimes ensure the best performing connections. If you're connecting other devices to your Wi-Fi, the easiest way and the best way, in my opinion, is to use the WPS button. If you ever pair 2 Bluetooth devices, such as a smartphone with headphones, then you already have the basic understanding of how this works. Let's say you want to connect a Windows 10 laptop to your router. On your laptop, you'll see your router's SSID pop up on the list of visible wireless networks in Windows. When you select the SSID and attempt to connect, Windows will prompt you to enter the network security key, which is a needless technical way of saying password. If you've done the proper job with your security and created a password with randomized uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, symbols, you might have forgotten it and do not want to mess with typing it ever again. So instead, press the WPS button on your router. You should allow at least a minute for the router and the laptop to find each other and successfully pair. Keep in mind that WPS only works with Windows and Android devices. Sorry, Apple. Here's a few extra steps. After the easy setup, some routers will walk you through a few extra steps, such as establishing parental controls, features that allow you to filter certain types of content, and automatically updating router firmware. After these preliminaries, proceed to the wireless setup, or simply name tab screen to activate your Wi-Fi network. Once your network is activated, you can connect any device to it and start browsing the web. Taking it to the next level, with most routers, simply activating your network and connecting to the internet is only scratching the surface of what you can do. While a tab name like Advanced Settings may seem a bit intimidating, the menus contained here often allow you to control some of your router's most useful features. We'll cover some of the most compelling items. So the quality of service, or QoS, is one of the most useful features for online entertainment. It allows you to select and prioritize the upstream and downstream traffic of your network, which you can provide a performance boost for your favorite streaming services or online game. Most routers will have a tab in their app configuration page dedicated to traffic monitoring. You want to navigate to this and find the QoS tab. Turn it on, and then you can prioritize certain services such as online games or video streaming. You can also prioritize devices on the network. Years ago, this was usually done by supplying the device's unique MAC address and setting a priority level for that device. However, these days, vendors are increasingly supplying more intuitive graphical approaches to the same idea as manual prioritization. And here's a screenshot. In other words, you can dictate which device or software that you want to have the priority. And as you can see, if you can read this, you see the ones that are going up, the Roku stick and the Apple TV and the another Roku are getting prioritized. And this usually will list all your objects that you have on your network. And you can just go and say, well, I want the Apple TV to be top priority. And you just list them in that order. So all your devices will display in the manual prioritization section, and by default, all devices fall in the normal priority queue. And you can see on the side, there's high priority, there's normal priority, and the low priority on the side here. And this is just an example. So if you want the up and down arrows, you want to set a higher priority or a low priority to the device. Make sure to click on or tap the save button to apply any changes that you've made. Another thing is guest networks. They're handy if you have prefer to keep all your data and files on your personal network out of unapproved hands. And to set one up, you want to go to your router's app configuration page and navigate to the wireless settings. Most routers have guest networks disabled by default, so there will be usually a page to set one up. You want to confirm your network's name and password, and the network will be set up. It's recommended that you apply at least WPA2 encryption to your regular Wi-Fi network. You may want to leave your guest network open for easier access. While convenient, this might also encourage connections from neighbors and stray people parking on your curb. So, limit guest network access privileges, such which band they can use and what hours the network is active. You also can be able to allow printer privileges or deny printer privileges. You also want to limit your guests, or you may want to, whether they use the 2.4 gigahertz or the 5 gigahertz band, but not both. Internet oldsters might remember the days before Dropbox, when transferring large files between systems required jumping through several hoops with dedicated file transfer protocol applications. FTP apps may have fallen out of common use, but the technology still can be handy to transfer lots of files without dealing with cloud services. FTP servers are only available to routers that have at least one USB port. The first thing you need is a USB storage device, such as an external hard drive plugged into your router. You want to make sure that the advanced settings on the app configuration page called USB storage, USB settings, or something similar. Once in that tab, you can click the checkbox for FTP via internet, and your USB device will now be available to users on your network. If you would like to be the only one to access that device, you can modify the read and write access in the admin to be admin only. Some routers will have you configure read and write access for specific folders. You simply click on new folder, select folder, or something similar, and navigate to the desired folder on your USB device. And you'll select that folder and click Apply Changes. And here's an example of one of those pages where you can configure your FTP server. MAC address filtering. Think of MAC Media Access Control as a universal unique name for any network device. The address is tied to device hardware. Some routers allow you to set a list of specific MAC addresses that can and can't access your network. If you ever look at the box of a device that you bought, particularly Wi-Fi, you'll see it'll indicate what the MAC address for that particular object is, or device, and that's what we're talking about here. It's like blacklisting or whitelisting what devices can access your LAN, Netgear devices, settings configuration. To do this, you find the MAC filter under the Advanced Settings tab. Now, some routers also now have dual and tri-band, so they will typically have you select which band the filter will apply to. In some routers, you'll have to select whether the entered MAC address will be the only one accepted onto the network or the only address rejected from it. Once you've set your preferences for these options, the last step is to find the MAC addresses on the device you'd like to filter and type them in. Parental controls at the minimum lets you establish time limits for when each allowed device identified by the MAC address can be on the network. So if your grandkids have a bad habit of using devices long after bedtime, but you don't want to constantly play the bad cop who has to police where and when devices get turned in every night, no problem. Use the MAC address filtering to make sure that only approved devices can connect to your router. Then use parental controls to make sure those allowed devices can only collect within approved hours. It only takes a few minutes to set up. It's like having a well-configured router in general will cure innumerable headaches and make sure your household runs much more smoothly. And last, what we are going to talk about is Wi-Fi. We've touched on it a bit along the way, but now we're going to get into some depth with it. So Wi-Fi stands for wireless fidelity. This term was coined by the branding company and is only caught on in its abbreviated form. On the technical side, 802.11 is a set of IEEE standards that govern wireless networking transmission methods. Each standard is an amendment that was ratified over time. The standards operate on various frequencies, delivering different bandwidths and support different numbers of channels. The subcategories are 11A and B were developed about the same time in 1999. B enjoyed faster acceptance because of its implement was more affordable. They use different frequencies, so they're incompatible. 11A found a niche in business, while less expensive 11B became standard at homes. G emerged as a hybrid standard that contained the top-rated features of A and B. Despite a large bandwidth and good speed, it still faced interference for other appliances. The 11N is presently used around the world. It evolved in terms of wireless antennas and signals. It has the capacity of transferring data at speeds of maximum 450 Mbps. It even has a better bandwidth, the 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, and limited interference. 802 11AD has high frequency, better speed, but short range. It is capable of providing speeds within ranges of 7 Gbps as well as higher internet speeds. The 802.11ax high connectivity through MIMO technology. It's a variant which mainly focuses on the advanced features of MIMO and enhanced life sustainability. MIMO is a set of multiple input and multiple output technologies for wireless communications, in which a set of users or wireless terminals, each with one or more antennas, communicate with each other. It's also highlighted advancements such as Bluetooth 5.0 technology and infrared connectivity. The dominant feature that is lacking in this variant is the improved speed. However, it was later noted for its top speed of 11 GPS at CES in 2018. But .11ax has been a game changer because it isn't capable of massive speed generated by the AD variant, but it's capable of providing much better internet connectivity and speeds when compared to the 11AC variant. This Wi-Fi technology was built to suit smart devices which are being used by conventional people on a regular basis. This standard made its market appearance in 2019, and the Wi-Fi Alliance bowed to the call for an easier nomenclature for the technology that has followed the 802.11 brand moniker, with the latest version designated as 802.11ax. Now, the reason why we talk about this is that depends on how old your Wi-Fi router happens to be. It would have one of these particular standards. And what we're kind of pointing out, that things have advanced to a degree where there's been lots of improvements made with the Wi-Fi technology. And I want to say that all of these are, and the latest ones rather, are backwards compatible. So most routers will connect to the lesser ones, with the exception of the A and B, which we said earlier were not really compatible. So what brought this all about is an organization called the Wi-Fi Alliance. And these companies came together to form a global nonprofit association with the goal of driving the best ever experience, regardless of your brand, using a new wireless network technology. So in 2000, they adopted the term Wi-Fi as the proper name for its technical work and announced its official name to be Wi-Fi Alliance. So the Wi-Fi Alliance introduced Wi-Fi 6 as the industry's designation for products and networks that support the next generation of Wi-Fi based on 802.11ax technology. Wi-Fi 6 is now part of the new naming approach by the Wi-Fi Alliance that provides users with an easy-to-understand designation for both the Wi-Fi technology supported by their device and used in connection and using a connection the device makes with a Wi-Fi network. The new naming system identifies Wi-Fi generation by a numerical sequence which corresponds to the major advancements in Wi-Fi. The generation names can be used by products vendors to identify the latest Wi-Fi technology that the device supports, and OS vendors to identify the generation of Wi-Fi connections between a device and network, and by service providers to identify the capabilities of a Wi-Fi network to their customers. So the new naming conventions are Wi-Fi 4, which used to be the 802.11n, Wi-Fi 5, which is the old 802.11ac, and Wi-Fi 6, which is the newest one, that supports 802.11ax. So what is Wi-Fi? It's a wireless network technology that allows devices such as computers, laptops, and desktops, mobile devices, smartphones and wearables, and other equipment, printers, video cameras, to interface with the internet. It allows the devices, as many more IoT devices, to exchange information with one another, creating a network. So when you access Wi-Fi, you are connecting to a wireless router that allows your Wi-Fi compatible device to interface with the internet. So what are the benefits of Wi-Fi? Well, first, convenience. Wi-Fi networks allow multiple users to connect through the same network. In a fraction of seconds, without any configuration, connections can be made through a router or a hotspot technology. This ease of use and convenience is not present in a wired network. In a wired network, it takes more time to configure and allow access to multiple users. Mobility. As long as you are in the range of a Wi-Fi access point with Wi-Fi, you can access the internet from anywhere you want, especially with mobile devices. You don't have to always sit right in front of your computer to get internet access. You can pay your bills, send email, search the internet, etc. Productivity. Users who connect to a Wi-Fi network can experience different ranges of speed as they move from one location to another. There are also less chances of experiencing technical glitches with a wireless LAN. As a result, users can be more engaged, complete tasks, and enhance their overall productivity. Deployment. The installation of a Wi-Fi access point is relatively easy compared to a wired network connection. There are no complex cables running in different locations and operating switches. Think of setting up a desktop with a network connection in your home office. Installing a new Wi-Fi router is easy rather than fitting a complex cable network. Expandability. You can add new users to a Wi-Fi network. With the proper wireless LAN credentials, more users can access the network. Additionally, there is no need to install any new type of equipment. All can be done with existing equipment. This significantly saves you time and effort. Cost. Compared to wired network connections, wireless networks offer significant advantages in terms of cost and labor, especially when installing a new Wi-Fi network. You could cut down the expenses in wiring and maintenance. Out of these bigger expenses comes under the wiring part. Since very small numbers of wires are used here, you can save you money. And the disadvantages. One of the disadvantages, of course, is security. Even though many encryption techniques are taken by wireless networks, still Wi-Fi is vulnerable to hacking. Due to its wireless nature, it has a high chance of being hacked, especially public Wi-Fi networks. Since public Wi-Fi networks are open to anyone, hackers can impose their fake networking ID. Without consent, users may connect to this fake ID and fall into the category of cyber attack victims. Range offered by Wi-Fi networks is limited, typically around 100 to 150 feet. While it's significant for a normal home, it can actually be a problem for building structures. The strength of the Wi-Fi network will be reducing as you move away from the access point. Since buildings can be multi-story, the strength of the Wi-Fi network can vary at different floors. The cloud weakens overflow. The only way to overcome this is by purchasing additional access points. Speed. The speed of a Wi-Fi connection is far slower than a wired connection, around 1 to 54 MIPS. This may look fine if there is a few devices connected to the network. The moment there are more devices connected, you could experience a drastic reduction in speed. Reliability. The Wi-Fi network works in frequency of 2.4 gigahertz. This frequency has high chances of getting hindered due to the electromagnetic waves and other forms of obstacles. As a result, you may frequently experience connectivity issues and weak signal strengths. Especially if you're doing large file transfers, the signal can get interfered. Bandwidth. Many routers only allow 30 maximum devices to be connected. The bandwidth of the Wi-Fi network gets weaker as you add more devices. It is solely reserved for a single user. Most often when the bandwidth gets limited, users can experience slower speeds. Health issues. There are certain conspiracy theories about Wi-Fi that causes health issues in humans. Some of them are cancer, insomnia, apoptosis, same as the effects caused by microwave frequencies. It is advised that pregnant women do not get exposed to the Wi-Fi signal as it releases electro radiation. Power outages, temporary loss of connectivity. Once power is restored, most devices will reconnect. So we talked about a wireless access point, and what that does, that allows a wireless device to connect to the wireless network. What a wireless access point does for your network is like what an amplifier does for your home stereo. A wireless access point takes the bandwidth coming from a router and stretches it in so many devices. Stretches it so many devices can go on the network from further distances. A wireless access point does more than simply extend Wi-Fi. It also gives useful data about the devices on the network, provides proactive security, and serves as many other practical purposes. And a question, what are hotspots? There are two types. One is the portable Wi-Fi hotspot, and it is a mobile hotspot obtained through your cell phone carrier. It is a small device that uses cellular towers that broadcast high-speed 4G and 5G broadcast signals. Multiple devices like iPads and laptops can connect wirelessly to the device, which in turn seamlessly connects to the internet whenever you travel. And some of these are called mini fives. You can buy them at your ISP. I'm sorry, your carrier, and they are acts very much like a cell phone, except that it's strictly for connecting to Wi-Fi. And the other one is called a mobile hotspot, and these are ones that are found on your smartphones with both tethered and untethered connections. So when you turn on your phone's mobile hotspot, you can share your wireless network connection with other devices that can connect, that can then access the internet. Now, this next topic, the mesh Wi-Fi router, is something that I'm going to concentrate on because this is, in my opinion, is really something that will really improve your Wi-Fi in your home and speed and reliability as far as your connections. So the mesh Wi-Fi, or what they refer to as whole home Wi-Fi systems, they consist of a main router that connects directly to your modem and a series of satellites modules or nodes placed around your house for full Wi-Fi coverage. And probably the most one that you've heard a lot about is the Google Wi-Fi, and you'll see it has those three little modules that you put in different places in your house. But they're all a part of a single wireless network and share the same SSID and password, unlike traditional Wi-Fi routers. Picture this: when you set up your home network with the latest Wi-Fi hardware and 100 Mbps internet connection, but for some reason you still encounter buffering when you try to stream video in the bedroom, you call your ISP and everything checks out. So what's the deal? Chances are your Wi-Fi isn't set up efficiently for a mesh Wi-Fi system. So what's slowing down your network? The weakest signal or Wi-Fi dead spots could be the result of physical obstructions. Simple things like floors, doors, and walls of your home can come between you and your router, especially if they're made of metal, brick, or concrete. Or perhaps the distance is simply too great in a large home, and your traditional router is only capable of reaching as far as the kitchen, but not the backyard, the garage, or the distant bedroom. Interference from other devices could also be the culprit, whether it's your microwave, cordless phone, or baby monitor. If you live in close quarters with other Wi-Fi networks and devices, such as an apartment complex, this problem increases tenfold. Think of it like a room full of people who are all speaking at once. Nobody is going to be heard very well. A better solution is Wi-Fi that works with your home design instead of against it. Think of a standard router like a speaker. You could be playing music loudly in front of your home, but the office in the back will only hear a faint echo. A standard router works the same way. You can only move so far from it before the signal starts to wane, and eventually it's going to cut out altogether. Instead, why not install a speaker in each room of the house? That's how home Wi-Fi or mesh networks work, with multiple nodes installed around your home so that you get a solid Wi-Fi coverage from one end to the other, even in the backyard. Wired and wireless expansion. In a modular system, there's one node connected to your modem that acts as a router. Each additional node finds the best channel and path to wirelessly connect to the previous one, creating a seamless and reliable Wi-Fi connection throughout your entire home. As you can see in our example, the internet, we have a node which goes to another node and then to your device. And there's no degradation of the signal path, it's all the same. However, if your home is already wired with internet cables in every room, some mesh systems can still connect with nodes together using an Ethernet cable to create a whole home Wi-Fi system. Even using the wired option, you still will be able to expand your signal to hard to reach areas, such as the garage or basement. So the name mesh network itself implies that every component of your Wi-Fi system is working together, and a seamless roaming is a perfect example of that. When you use a router and range extender combination, you have to switch between the network manually as you move from one coverage zone to the other. Good example. If you have a router and you go out and purchase an extender, and when you get the extender installed, you'll notice that when you have a selection on your available wireless networks, you'll see the extender listed separately. It'll be something like, well, I'll just use mine as an example. My network name is Nice Maple, but then the extender that I had installed would then be Nice Maple _ EXT, stands for extender. If I got a second one, I would have another entry that would say Nice Maple _ EXT _ EXT, and so forth. So each one of those entities, they're going to be a degraded signal because those are basically Wi-Fi devices, just like your cell phone or anything else that has to connect to your router. Now, when you pass between the rooms where you have those installed, you really will not notice them switching over, but they will switch to that particular, it'll connect to that particular extender. Where in a mesh system, you don't have those. Everything is all on the same network. So regardless of where you roam within your house, it's going to be seamless. And so you only have one network with one name and password. That means that as you move about your home, you'll never have to manually switch from one network to the other. So go ahead, you can stream video in your living room, your kitchen, your bedroom without worrying about buffering or a dropped connection. And as you can see here in this example, mesh versus the traditional router, the very top one is our mesh system where we have the nodes. You notice the signal is 100% all across until we get to our device. And here at the bottom one, the one that's gray, you notice that we have our router and then we have our range extender. So between the router and the range extender, there's 100% signal. But then as they progress, you lose signal strength. So by the time you get to your device, where it depends on where part of the house, you're only getting 25% of the signal. So comparing range extenders, the question is, why not use a range extender? So comparing a range extender to the whole home Wi-Fi is like comparing apples to oranges. Range extenders are certainly effective when it comes to increasing the range of your router, but they do so at the expense of Wi-Fi performance, which gets cut in half. In a large space where Wi-Fi struggles to reach every corner, a range extender can diminish the overall performance of your network, creating a bottleneck effect. You might also experience connection issues when jumping from the router to the extender because you need to switch networks manually. For example, even when you're standing next to the range extender, you can still experience dead zones or slowdowns if you haven't manually changed your device over from the router's signal. These two separate networks also have different names and interfaces, which can be a serious hassle. As I mentioned before, they'll have that _ext suffix to them. Now, most of us, the switchover is automatic, but I'm sure there are instances where you may have to connect manually to the extender. Another protocol is IPv4 versus IPv6. I think that was kind of in the news a couple years ago, but anyway, I thought I would include that here to say that IP is an abbreviation for Internet Protocol. It's a protocol that helps computers, devices communicate with one another over a network. As the V in the name suggests, there are different versions of Internet Protocol, IPv4 and IPv6. Internet Protocol is a set of rules that helps the router, helps with routing packets of data so that the data can move across the network and make it to the right destination. Internet Protocol helps route data around networks. To accomplish this, each device is assigned an IP address. So IP4 is the original version that was launched in 1983. However, its 32-bit format only allowed for 4 billion unique addresses, which can't serve the needs of the modern world. To address the lack of the unique IP4 addresses and make some other technical changes, IPv6 was created. It uses a 128-bit address format that offers 1,028 times as many unique addresses as IPv4. For most people, all you need to know is IPv6 uses a different format and offers 4 more unique addresses than IPv4. So, getting the most out of your router, anybody can get an internet connection up and running in a few minutes by using your router's quick start guide, but most models hide lesser known features, known treasures in their setup menus. If you want to get the most value possible out of your router investment, take the extra time to explore these advanced options. If you still are in the market for a new router, consider going beyond the box features list and the product spec sheet. Download the manual, dig into these advanced options to see which features will deliver the most value in your environment. Once you're up and running, test your internet speed. If you need more guidance, Google 10 tips to speed up your Wi-Fi and 12 tips to troubleshoot your internet connection. If you need to find your unique IP address, you need to know it's in order to log. You'll need to know that in order to log into your router. In general, people want to log into their routers to update the software, change security settings, set up parental controls, set up IP address filtering. So router manufacturers like D-Link and Linksys uses, as we said before, the 192.168.0.1 or the .1.1 as the default router IP address and make this information available to their websites. The default router IP address should also be available in the instruction manual that came with your router. But you can also find it printed on this sticker or label attached to the bottom of the router. If it's been changed by your ISP, you will have to find it on your computer using the method below. So you can go into Windows 10 and find what the IP address is. And these instructions will give you the step-by-steps to do that. So we won't go through all of that right now, but here's some of the information in settings where we'll show you what the default gateway is. So once you have the router's IP address, you'll be able to log onto your router by typing the router's IP address in Chrome or any other web browser. So in summary, I'm going to say the internet doesn't have to be scary. The best way to protect yourself online is to know what to expect, take the time to understand some popular threats, and learn how to avoid them. Think of your antivirus program as a safety net that will catch you if your safe browsing habits aren't enough. Remember these tips. Don't visit unsafe websites. Ignore any emails from unknown senders. Protect your private information. Keep your email out of the hands of predatory marketing companies. Keep your antivirus up to date. Perform routine virus scans. Don't keep your passwords saved in a document on your computer and change them regularly. Use a password manager. Reboot your modem and router at least twice a month. It's always easier to avoid danger when you know what to look for. With good habits and strong security software, you'll be able to browse safely, check in on your loved ones, and enjoy all the benefits of being connected. So here's some resources that you can further look at, and that'll be in the materials that you'll get sent at the end of this presentation. And with that, I'll take some questions.
Before we start on the regular questions, Bill, I forgot to remind, since we were kind of pushed earlier, that we need to have people change their name and put it in as the name they registered with on our Google Forms. Because as I look through the list, there's going to be a lot of people who aren't going to get any follow-up material or the link to your video, because we aren't going to be able to match what we see in the participant list for Zoom with the actual registration that we have. So you can right click on your little thumbnail picture and choose rename and put what you registered with, or you could submit it to Judy in the chat box. But with 182 people right now, I can see a lot of people who are going to miss out because we don't know who you really are. So if you do that, please. What we'll do first is most people have been sending the questions to Judy, and she's been collecting them, and she'll start off by asking those questions to Bill, and then when those are gone, then we'll open up the mics for people to be discussing and actually sharing. So Judy, turn it over to you. And of course you can turn on your mics.
I have a gazillion questions here, so here we go.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Oh,
And,
well,
yeah,
we're
Either
getting
way.
in here. Remember, I need to eat breakfast sometimes, so okay. Schwinn wants to know, until today, do you have a separate router and a modem, or do you put them together in one equipment? Which one is better?
Well, my opinion is the separate ones. I can't say that they're better, but I think it's my preference. And the reason why is because I believe I have more control over my internet access. I've had both, so I kind of know the obstacles that I ran up against. First of all, the combo, which they call a gateway, is usually the one that's provided by your your ISP. In my case, it was Cox, and so I wanted to get the highest speed internet that I could afford, and I got the a panoramic modem that's made by a company called Technicolor. And that particular model has only 2 Ethernet ports on the back of it, and which kind of limits your, if you do have a wired connection of any kind of need a wired connection, you're only limited to those 2. And the other thing is that it was a booger to get into. My provider wasn't very forthcoming in trying to give me the information of how I could access to get in some of the other features. Like I was interested in setting up a guest network. Well, in order to do that, I had to get inside of that router to turn that feature on. So all I'm saying, really, if you want to have more control over your internet, it's, in my opinion, it's best to go out and purchase your own router and modem. And I don't believe that commercially you can buy one that's an all-in-one. If you go to the big box store or order it through Amazon or whatever, you're going to get separate. You have to buy a separate router and a separate modem. But I think there's more flexibility with how them separated.
And my comment is, I have Time Warner and now the crummy Spectrum, but change out your equipment. If you are using your ISP's equipment, change it out. About every other year, I would unplug both and take my little body down to the store, and they got used to this, and I would turn in my stuff for new stuff. And one time when I hadn't done that in a timely manner, and I had a tech person come out, he said, you know, this piece of equipment is only good until the end of the year. And, you know, Spectrum's probably not going to get in touch and tell me that. So I unplugged that little darling and was at the store the next day getting a new one. And then I went ahead and got my own 2 pieces of equipment. So Bill has a 300 MB Comcast connection. He gets 300 speeds when he connects a laptop directly to the modem. However, when connected to his PepWave Soho router, he only gets about 120 MB download speed to my desktop with an Ethernet connection. Is this normal?
I would say no, because typically, if you have a wired connection, you should get a faster speed than you have with a wireless one. I think what I would do, you probably have done that already, is just reboot the router and the modem and see if that improves. If not, you might want to look at, we talked about channels. So it depends on what channel is connecting. You might want to fiddle with that. In other words, go in, the default they said was 6, and that anything between 1 and 11 would be the extreme. So you might want to just reset the channel for that particular band to 1 or 11 to see if that improves. But it sounds like you probably have some either you have some interference between that's causing that, or I would say maybe just try to see if you can tweak some of those settings to improve your connectivity. Just write down what you've done so that you can always go back and change it back to what it was in case it goes south on you.
Murray has installed ad block, which has a bit of a problem. It blocks the ads for a while after he manually refreshes it, but as time goes by, they keep creeping back in. He has not been able to figure out what might be wrong with this configuration. Their local computer club, which is the Victoria Computer Club in Canada, club router expert, has not been able to figure this out either. Do you have any idea how to fix it?
I do not. I don't use ad block. My suggestion probably it would just get rid of that software and try another
Ad blocking program.
Yeah.
Steve asks, has anyone tried the new cell tower routers available on Amazon? These cell tower routers allow access to the internet at much faster speeds and bypass the Comcast and AT&T wired internet access. So, we'll remember that. And when we open it up to everybody, maybe somebody has the answer. And Murray says he thinks he has a dumb terminal because he's connected his Raspberry Pi via SSH from a terminal emulator in Linux. Okay, Murray. Ellie would like you to talk about modems for Verizon customers.
You would have to go. I don't remember seeing actually one a modem that was specifically branded for Verizon. So it seems to me that those probably are only available for Verizon, which seems odd, but I don't know anything. I couldn't recommend anything. The router, if you're going to buy a commercial router, you'd have to go and ask them what's available for purchase.
And I think we answered Marshall's question. Is there any advantage of purchasing and using your own modem other than cost?
Oh, I'd say there's lots of benefits, really.
Yeah, and you already talked about those.
Yeah.
So that's answered. Are there different quality modems, and are they all usually compatible with your ISP? When I bought my modem, I made sure that it was compatible with Spectrum. It said so on the box, and I bought it at Best Buy.
Yes, and then make sure the latest one is the DOCIS 3.1 is the one that you should look for. They're really horribly expensive. They're almost $200, but I think they're worth every penny.
Kurt had a comment. A wireless router must have an antenna or two. They don't have to be external, just like your smartphone. And Pam asks, what are the cons and pros and cons on using your old equipment instead of upgrading to something new? And that's your Pam in your group.
One thing, you're not getting the benefits of the latest technology. So your speed and access is all predicated by the equipment you currently have. So if you upgrade your equipment, you'll find a real improvement to your Wi-Fi and your other connectivity.
That's what I told her.
And some of those, another thing you might add is that some of those devices might be a security risk because they're not updated to the latest firmware.
Neil, looks like from Canada, says, most DSL modems seem to be all-in-ones. The Netgear DM200 is 1100 CDS on Amazon. That seems expensive. Kurt had a comment. Every DHCP server that he's seen allows control over the number of IP addresses that's supported. The max is somewhere around 253 per router. Murray has a question. I see that I have a device with MAC address, blah, 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 which when he looks it up says it is made by Shangqing Fuji Electronics Company Limited and is connected by Wi-Fi. I'm not sure what this is. Should I disconnect or block it? I have a few other things like this, some of which I cannot find the information about the MAC address owner. He has also had a lot of trouble with the Wi-Fi in one of his rooms. He bought an inexpensive mesh Wi-Fi router and that fixed the connection. So should he 86 all of his stuff from China?
No, because those are devices that he has connected to his network. And I mean, most electronic devices that you buy today are going to be made in China. I mean, there's just no getting around it. It's going to be either China, Korea, or Japan. And so that module that's in that device is of Chinese origin, but it could be a Bose radio or a smartphone or anything. So you need to find out exactly what the actual device you're using before you start. Well, you'll find out if you disconnect it, you'll no longer have use of that item.
He has a comment on WPS. If you use it to connect devices, turn it off when you're done. WPS can make it easier to hack into a network. Kurt had a comment.
That's not true.
Okay.
Because it's only on when you press the button, and it will stay on. Then it will then time out and it'll be off. There's no way of turning it off unless other than the switch to turn it on is the WPS button itself. When you press it, it usually glows a color. I don't know, mine's green. And then it'll blink for a while, and if nothing's connected to it, it'll turn itself back off.
Comment from Kurt. Wi-Fi Analyzer, Android, and other apps will show you the channels in use or that are available. Bill says he has a combo modem router with AT&T as a provider. During a storm, the system went down and he was told by AT&T to push reset afterwards to reestablish the connection. Since then, his signal is okay. Is there something else I should do? And did my password change, or is that it for AT&T? I told him after having, since October, my internet access off for 111 hours. Every time it came back on, everything was perfect, password intact, and Spectrum went on its merry way.
It'll reconnect as long if you don't do a factory reset or anything like that. Your Wi-Fi devices will reconnect to the network.
Marshall has a question. Can one usually replace MAC addresses shown in various network device lists for connected devices using more descriptive names? Like your example about your FBI.
Well, no, that was the SSID.
Yeah.
But the MAC addresses has a fixed set of numbers. Now you can go and track those and put them in a spreadsheet and then identify them to a device, but you can't go in and rename the number to name.
Comment from Kurt says, don't trust MAC addresses unconditionally. They can be cloned. Chitra says, which is the MAC address on an iPhone? How do you find it? Is it advisable to add MAC addresses in use to the router for added security?
Well, you can do that. I mean, that's part of that MAC filtering. But to find the MAC address, if you go into your settings, about phone, it should show it. At least on the Androids, it does. I don't know about, well, I have an iPad here. I can look and see. Go ahead, ask the questions. I'll
I
find
will.
out.
Dick wants to know, how can he determine which 802.11 his router uses?
That's a good question. If you look at the bottom or the label, it should say whether it's a 802.11N or A or whatever. You have to look at the label that's attached to the router.
Kurt had a comment, a network extender can use the same SSID and password as the router. Devices will switch if necessary to the strongest signal. It's much cheaper than mesh hardware.
Well,
And Neil had a comment saying range extenders drop throughput to 50%, where mesh uses a back channel to give 100%.
yeah, that's what I would agree with, because the extenders are just another Wi-Fi device, and so as you add more, they're going to generate the signal. I had two at one point. I had a when I bought my mesh router, I used my old extenders I had. They were both the same brand. They were both Linksys, and the two, you could tell that the signal had really degenerated. And when I added the one, I bought a node, and now it shows as two routers. In fact, I was going to show that at some point, but I find it works a lot better.
I have a comment that many people don't ever bother to register their equipment, but you need to really, if you have your router, you need to register it, because I know with my Netgear, I'm getting updates all the time. And if I hadn't registered it, I'd be way behind on having it, up close and personal and current. I have 34 more questions in my chat box here. We have a question. Can I reboot the router by unplugging the entire system? Would you go over the steps for doing your router and your modem in order, and how you have to count to a minute?
Yeah, what I do is I unplug my router and then my modem, or turn the on and off switch, it doesn't matter, and then wait for 30 seconds. Then I reconnect the modem and wait for all the lights to come on. I wait 30 seconds before I turn it back on. Then I wait till all the lights come on. And one probably will start blinking. That's okay. And then I turn the router on. So turn the router off first, and then the modem, and then just reverse the order when you turn it back on. Turn the modem on, then the router, and wait 30 seconds between.
I wait a minute.
Yeah.
And if you have your own equipment, I don't know if your ISP is the same as Spectrum, but they will answer questions about my equipment. They are more than happy to do that. They're tech support. And they have make, model, number, the whole 9 yards. And I think that's very nice of them to do that. Okay, this is from Johnny. He said he saw what he believes is a Wi-Fi booster. Can he use a booster instead of building a mesh? Is a booster the same as an extender?
I think boosters are phony. You see those being advertised as improving your Wi-Fi, but I don't believe they do anything. they're not the same as an extender.
Ben wants to know why reboot the router modem twice a month.
Because remember, it's like your computer. It is a computer without a keyboard and a display, and you reboot your computer to clear the cache or the memory that's possibly has been stored in the various electronic components that's inside on your motherboard, like diodes. They all have memory, so you're just clearing the memory of the device.
Lincoln would like to know how are mesh modules connected? Wire, cable, or wireless?
Wireless.
Ellie says,
I was going to say, for your phone, if you go into your Wi-Fi settings, it'll show you your MAC address.
Ellie wants to know, is VPN security enough for mobile connections on your phone?
VPN?
Yep.
Well, it'd be the same as it is for your computer. I would say yes.
Darlene says her 5G network doesn't show on her laptop. How does she fix it? Oh, she has a gateway.
I know.
You know the answer to that? The 5G, well, 5G depends on, I'm not sure how that, go ahead.
I say, her device doesn't support 5G. I have that same problem with older equipment.
Yeah, because that's 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
Jim Glass is having problems with his old gateway. He's trying to upgrade it, but he can't.
The only thing I'm seeing 5G on is my new phone.
Oh.
It does show it. It does show 5G.
Okay. John Metcalf, who's one of my members, says he does not use the 5G gigahertz connection because it does not hold, and he has to go back to 2.4. Reason for that?
Because the device doesn't support 5G.
Like my Pixel phone doesn't.
Oh wait, we're talking about two things. So let's get that straight. We're talking about 5 gigahertz, which is the Wi-Fi band, not to be confused with the 5G that is the cell phone network. And I think I got confused on that when that question was asked. As John said, the reason why the former question, the reason why the 5G doesn't show is that the device itself is not capable. It's a 2.4 gigahertz device, so it doesn't have a 5G transmitter or receiver in it.
It's the 5 gigahertz connection, but it doesn't stay. It doesn't hold, it doesn't stick, and he has to go back to the 2.4
That's
gigahertz.
because the 5G signal is weak.
Well, he does live down in the hole behind me here.
Yeah.
Ellie would like you to please discuss MOCA 2.5.
MOCA 5.
Yeah, capital M, little o, capital C, capital A, 2.5. Perhaps when we open it up to everybody, somebody will have an answer.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I don't either in all my reading. Dave Melton, another one of my members, says in the multi-mode Wi-Fi network setup, why don't you see a degradation of the speed from a node to the router like in an extender?
Because the node is actually a second router. There's the mesh is bridging two routers together. Actually, that's the way I see the technology working. That little node is actually another router. It's like
That's
having
like,
two,
oops,
like having two routers you're putting together two routers.
that's like in my side of the valley. Dave lives on the other side of the valley. My spectrum is iffy because we don't have enough nodes connections on this side of the valley. So I'm assuming it's apples and apples. Kurt makes a comment and he says there's a lot of hype about Wi-Fi 6, but a well-equipped hybrid home network with both wired and wireless access will meet almost anyone's needs except for maybe gamers. Edward says, isn't it better to contact ISP before buying modem router to make sure they will support it? Again, Edward, when I bought my stuff at Best Buy, it said on the boxes it was compatible with Spectrum.
And when I purchased mine, I asked and they told me which routers, which modems would work. And and they won't work until you actually call the ISP and tell them that you have this new modem. And at that point, you will find out whether or not it's going to work, because they'll say, well, we can't connect to this. And then your only alternative is to disconnect it, rebox it, and take it back to the store.
Never throw the box
but
away.
I don't think that'll happen. If you look at the box, it'll have the companies or the ISPs that modem will support. So the only thing you have to do is when you get home, get it installed, call the ISP, give them the information that's on the router or the modem. I mean, I'm sorry, they only want to know about the modem. They don't care about the router. So just give them the information that's on the modem and they'll register it and you'll be in business.
Will you please clarify the sequence? Do you turn your modem off first or do you turn your router back on? And then which one do you turn on first when you're reversing the process?
When you're rebooting, you want to turn on the modem first, because the modem is going to get the information from the ISP. And once all the lights are on and you might have one flickering, then you can connect your router to the modem. But you always want to start the modem first and then the router. And when you turn off, I don't know if the sequence of turning it off is really that important, but just a way of remembering that you turn the router off first and you turn the modem off last. And so when you reverse it, you want to turn the modem on first and the router last.
According to Spectrum, it is important. And how do you reboot the router? I'll answer that. I just unplug it.
Yeah, that's all that's necessary.
Ellie says,
my router happens to have an on and off switch, but some don't.
Well, mine's not. It's in a shelf over here. It's easier to unplug it for me from the surge protector. Ellie says she has an old 2.4 gigahertz only router and wireless network range extender used to transmit 5 gigahertz. Now only 2.4 gigahertz. Why? Would a dual band router fix this?
I don't think I fully understand the question. If she has an old 2.4 router, that's all she's going to get. She's not going to even get any. She's not going to even get 5 gigahertz.
With a range extender?
Well, the range extender won't improve that either, because it won't connect. It'll connect to 2.4 because that's the only signal that's being put out.
Could
So
she
buying
use
buying a dual point, in other words, buying a dual band extender won't improve her situation, because it will only connect at 2.4.
How about if she buys a dual band router?
Then she'll be able to connect to her either the 2.4 or the 5 gigahertz with no problem.
Comment from Alex. Modem and router must have gigabit ports to max speeds. John says he uses an Eris cable modem, his own, through Spectrum. He checked for updates on the manufacturer site and they said, oh shoot, Updates are made available through the ISP and they are responsible for the updates. So he doesn't get any. We don't like Spectrum in our area. John said,
Well, that would be true. That would be true for anyone. I mean, I'm expecting to get updates to, I have an ARIS modem as well, and the updates will come from the ISP, not from ARIS.
I come from directly from Netgear.
On your router, but not the modem.
Oops, that's right. Sorry. John says change the cable, but I don't know what that's in reference to. Neil says if it is hardwired, perhaps the design of the router is poor. Edward says ISP branded modems on eBay are probably stolen. Comcast says their branded modems are for rent only and can't be legally purchased.
That's true. The Technicolor one that I had for my high-speed internet, I could not purchase. It was only available from the ISP as a rental.
Clint says Verizon provides a hotspot for Wi-Fi connections. Ellie says most of the routers list compatibility with non-Verizon ISPs, Xfinity, Cox, etc. Alan's comment is, I have read that because you can connect to your network may not be secure, such as your home automation stuff, your TV, your oven, your refrigerator, your washer, your dryer, your Herman, the robotic vacuum. It is more susceptible to being hacked. So your entire network doesn't get hacked. Use two networks to protect your network. Separate your personal equipment, such as your phones and computers, from the IoT things. Most modems have a guest network. Use that. And Bill talked about guest networks.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but that's a good idea. The guest network is usually limited as to what you can do on it. And I don't think it would actually serve my purposes. But I do have those items that were mentioned. I do have those, and they're connected to my regular Wi-Fi network.
That was going to be my question. Sudsy and Herman and all those folks. Okay. Carol Picard wanted to know about modems compatible with Spectrum. I checked my box at Best Buy, and it's with when I bought my modem, and it said compatible with Spectrum. From Lincoln, can ISPs throttle your own modem and router like they do on their own equipment? Good question.
Yeah, I mean, you're at the, depends on your plan. So if your plan, part of that agreement is that they're going to limit the speeds at different times. It doesn't matter what equipment you have, you're at the mercy of the ISP.
Charles said he asked his ISP for a new router replacement, and he received a new modem with no new router. Well, ask again.
No, go buy one.
Yeah, well, yeah, don't forget I said that. Oh, Carol says she had unidentified device with Chinese name on the network, and it turned out to be a photo frame. Frank, is there a significant advantage of DOCSIS 3.1 over 3.0?
The only advantage is that the latter is the new, I mean, yeah, the latter is the older standard. I think I didn't go in to look what the actual differences were. I just know that the latest modems are DOCSIS.
Okay. Sharon says she uses Bluetooth headphones with audiobooks on her tablet when she's walking in the area. Is this a security risk?
I wouldn't think so. Bluetooth has very limited range, and I do not know of anyone ever having their Bluetooth hacked.
All right, you guys. I have a total of 49 more new messages. I'm calling a halt right now and opening it up for live Q&A. Bill will get an email with all of these 49 questions here, and I will be sending the answers out to everybody who attended today. But, you know, like I said, I need to eat breakfast sometime, okay?
And I will research those questions to clarify anything that I said.
So, Bob G, you're on. Unmute yourself, please. Spacebar, Alt A.
Or let's move to Murray since he was at the top of the list.
I do them in order on my screen, John. Craig, you're next. Unmute yourself, please.
They can't. They can't. I
Okay.
got to do my flip
Oh,
switch.
John.
Nope, can't unmute.
I am now unmuted.
So am I.
Okay, then I'm going
Same
back
here.
to Bob G because he's first in line for me.
If you're looking to protect your smart or Internet of Things devices, I suggest you take a look at Omni from Avast, specifically designed to protect those devices because it uses both hardware and software to keep you safe.
Over to you, Craig.
Well, I have a couple comments about mesh networks. I have a Netgear Orbi, and they can connect, the satellites connect either wireless or wired. And I think Bill said that they could only be wireless. It depends on your device on whether they can be wired or not. And also, a friend of mine has a Orbi Wi-Fi 6, and they had to actually get with their manufacturer of a laptop to have them update the Wi-Fi drivers before it would connect to that new router. So Wi-Fi 6, their old laptop didn't support that, so it refused to connect until they updated their driver for the Wi-Fi interface on the laptop. And there was a question about the cell companies, you know, AT&T, Verizon, and their little micro cell tower devices. I had a microcell until the battery died, or till the charge unit, the wall wart got fried in a thunderstorm. And they told me that I'd have to buy a new one, but they said, try on your new smartphones, just turn on Wi-Fi calling in the phone. That's certainly true for the newer iPhones. And so it will connect if you're at home, because I have terrible AT&T cell tower at home. So when I'm at home, it actually makes calls through my Wi-Fi network, and I don't have that micro cell anymore. Don't need it.
Murray, unmute. You're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, I wanted to clarify my first question. With the ad block, that is that router that I've got is an open WRT router. So the ad block is on the router, not on the browser. And the whole idea when it's working properly, well, I mean, when it's working, is it blocks all the ads to all the computers and devices in my whole network. That's the advantage. It doesn't even get to your computers. But as I said, I have to refresh it manually fairly frequently for it to keep working reliably to block all the ads.
Is that, Mary, is that due to the fact that it's getting updates?
No, I think it's because what it's doing is blocking them for a while. It may be possible that it's getting updates, and I'm not exactly sure, because the person who is the expert on IPv6 and routers and networks in our computer club, he says he has one, and he never has to do that refresh manually. And he can't figure out why mine does. But anyway, I think maybe I might try a Pi-hole for the same purpose. Then I also want to mention just on the open mesh, the actual device was sold kind of as, I'm not sure whether it's a range extender or something, but it is actually a mesh device. It's only about $35 Canadian. And when I put that in, not only did my network problems get cured, but my data transfer speed to the computers in that room improved by a factor of more than 10. I was really amazed at how much it improved. So it's really a good idea, and they're so small and simple. My particular one also has an Ethernet connection on it so that you can connect something to it through cable as well as Wi-Fi, and then you're connected to your network. Anyway,
Mary,
those are my
that's,
comments.
Mary, that's what I have. I didn't mention the brand of router I have. It's a Linksys, and it is a Vish router, but it's more traditional in appearance. But I have one of my node, as Mary said, it looks like an extender, but it's actually a mesh, and it plugs in to the wall just like the extender does. And but on the when I look at my my Linksys app, it shows as it's a second router.
Yeah, it does have a MAC address that I can use to configure it, because of course I had to put in the what do you call it, I had to put in the password so it could connect to my own network.
Right, the SSID, yes.
Yeah, but then I also, for clarification on that device that I don't know what it is, I have seen occasionally where things they've been blocked, but they've sort of tried to connect to the network, and when I've looked them up, they are known things used by drive-by spammers.
Oh.
And so that's what I was worried about with that particular device, and it might not actually be one of my devices.
Okay, thanks, Mary. Over to Ellie.
Yes, thank you. Could you expand again on why you prefer a modem and router to be separate rather than integrated? And also the MoCA is multimedia over coaxial access. It's a way to add an adapter and plug into a coax outlet, and then through the adapter you have an Ethernet cable connecting to other devices. For a TV it would be another coax cable, but laptops, desktops, etc. But the modem integrated or separate? You like the separate, why?
Well, I've had both, and I just find that the separate modem and router I can manipulate better than I can one when it's all integrated. And I guess it's probably due to the manufacturer. And the only ones I've seen, the integrated ones, are the ones that are provided by the ISP. And the one that I had was a Technicolor. And when I asked about what I needed to do to get inside the router, they didn't have any information to tell me. So that kind of turned me kind of against those. But I just find the more traditional router and modem to be something I can work with easier than I can one that comes from my ISP, because I think the all-in-ones only are available from your ISPs. It's not one that you can go out and purchase yourself.
All-in-ones are harder to replace parts of it.
Yes, that's true. And that's the other thing. If you don't necessarily have to, if you want to change out the router, you can just change out the router and not necessarily have to change out the modem. Is going to be the one that you don't necessarily change out as frequently as you would the router.
When I got my router, one of the things I had to do was I had to get my ISP provider to set it up as a bridge device rather than the way it would normally come in order to do that. They did that, no problem. It was free, but I had to ask them to do that That may be the case for some that you get from your ISP.
When you have the
Over to
all-in-one.
Gabe. Gabe's
Yeah.
turn.
Well, Ellie, did we get your?
I just wanted to
Well, I
make a-
just want to comment, Netgear makes an integrated modem, cable modem router.
Okay, for your ISP?
No, Netgear, that purchased independently, cable modem router.
Yes, but I mean, but it has to be, how do you know?
It wasn't so compatible, but, and it did not have a USB port. It's a Nighthawk line from Netgear. But I think there were other integrated modem
What
routers.
I was getting at, the modem part of it, is it compatible with your ISP? How do you?
You have to go through settings with the ISP to release and change,
Okay,
not easily.
Over to you, Gabe.
Thanks. I just wanted to comment on DOCSIS. That's how DOCSIS is pronounced. DOCSIS is the cable system protocol that communicates between your cable modem and your cable ISP. And you need the current DOCSIS standard if you're going to upgrade your cable speed. You can buy cable modems, you can get them from your ISP, but you don't want to pay for a higher tier of service from your cable company than your cable modem can support. So there's DOCSIS 3.0, 3.1, probably 3.2 by now, and each of those is capable of supporting a higher speed from your cable ISP. You just need to make sure that your DOCSIS box matches whatever you're paying for from your ISP.
yeah, oh, well, on my case, Cox is doing DOCSIS 3.1, I believe. I'm almost certain they are, because they made a point of that.
Over to
I think
Steve.
all the ISPs have moved to the higher standard.
One never knows. Steve,
Well,
you're on.
Yeah, hi. Is it possible to get a node module that you can add to your existing router?
Depends on what router you have. If you have a mesh router, the answer would be yes. If it's a standard router, then you can't add a mesh router. You can't add a mesh node to that. It would have to be a Wi-Fi extender.
Okay. Oh, and there is such a thing as bluejacking, which is hacking into a Bluetooth. If you look up bluejacking, I think Ask Leo had it on his site.
That's interesting. I had not heard that.
Yeah, it was sort of like with the Mac Apple, where they created a virus deliberately to see if you could put a virus onto a Mac, and of course you can't. Well, they did the same with the Bluetooth as well. The first attempt to bluejack was done deliberately to try and see if it could be done.
Yeah, well, I was asking her question in reference. She said she was jogging, and the range of the Bluetooth is so narrow. I would think it would be a rather difficult. It would take effort to do that, but I was unaware.
There actually has been some Bluetooth signals that have been picked up from 2 miles away.
Okay, that's good to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you do a lot, well, I had problems with Bluetooth, so I did a lot of research into it, and that was one of the things I picked up on.
But there's nothing you can do to prevent that, is there? I mean, there's no antivirus or software or hardware that can prevent you from getting bluejacked.
That would be a Bob G question.
On your, first of all, it only happens if you're using an Android, and you have to make sure that you're using at least version 10 in your Android device. If it's less than 10, you're susceptible to that particular vulnerability.
Thank you. I am going to include with the handouts an article by Greg Skalka, the president of the APCUG group in San Diego, as well as a link to the BTC presentation he did on mesh routers. He did a ton and a half of research, and he just lets you know all the steps that he had to take to get it through his 2-story house and out into his backyard. Over to Kurt.
I'm a big proponent of using what works and using what you need. So one thing that hasn't been mentioned in this discussion at all are little Ethernet switches. You can buy them in anywhere from 4-port to 32-port sizes. Now the 32-port ones are industrial strength. But in my home network, at one end of the house, I have an Action Tech DSL router, which has only a couple of Ethernet ports on it. One of those goes to the computer that's in the room where it is, and the other one goes to a piece of Cat6 that goes essentially from one end of my house to the other, where I'm sitting. And that comes into, I believe it's a 10-port switch. And that provides my computers that I've got here and things like that. And another cable that runs around the outside of the room. You can do that easily if you've got wall-to-wall carpeting. You stick it along the baseboard. And that goes to a 5-port switch. Okay. That serves my TV and the cable box, and actually it's the satellite and all that other stuff. And also serves another Wi-Fi router that's running as an access point. And both of the routers that I have support 2.4G and 5G. They run the same SSID on 4G. Okay, both sides of the house with the same passwords. Same thing with the 5G, the same SSIDs on the same passwords. And for our devices, if I'm out here, I connect to the close one. If I take my cell phone into the bedroom, I connect on the other side of the house. And it's simple, it's reliable. Most of this is done, except that last leap, via wire. And hardware is always faster than software. So it's inexpensive, it's simple. As many devices as I want, as many Raspberry Pis as I can connect. It's all there.
Yeah, I guess, and I don't disagree with you, Kurt, but I did not want to run wire all over the house, so that's the reason why I have elected to go wireless. And I guess I was kind of biased in that way that I didn't talk about having wired connections.
Yeah.
But I adopted wireless many, many years ago when I got my a second computer at another house, and I bought a wireless router to connect there. And since then, I've been a kind of a believer of it.
Yeah.
So
there are a couple of bedrooms at the other end of our house that have satellite service, and for the most part, that is wireless. But and the wire that goes from one end to the other, we go down into the basement, the other end of the house, comes up into a wall jack underneath my desk here to get distributed then wherever else it needs to go.
When all of my connection equipment, so to speak, was in the back bedroom, also known as the office, I had a 50-foot Ethernet cable from that into the family room with my laptop. And I always thought it was perfectly all right because it was exactly the same color as my porcelain tile. So I just ignored it. Kurt, could you write those steps up for me and send it to me so I can send it out to everybody?
I'll try, sure.
Thank you so much.
I just want to mention that my latest switch that I've got 3 switches. Mine sounds a lot like Kurt's, but the latest one I got has the capability of making the signal stronger on those cables that are longer, which is a sort of a neat feature. It balances the power out to the cable based on the distance the cable runs to the next switch or the next device.
That's a good idea, but it's not a problem if your cable length is limited to about 50 feet.
Over to Edward Kenny from Huntsville.
When I first got my Logitech wireless keyboard, I couldn't get to work. And since it's at 2.4 gigahertz, just like the Wi-Fi is, I expected the router. So I turned my gateway and got a dual band and forced everything over on as possible on the 5 gigahertz. The problem went away. And I also added that some people say that if you have one of those 2.4 gigahertz dongles like a Wi-Fi, you should plug it into USB 2.0 port, because that also helps. Because pull the interference on USB 3.0 on that frequency.
But Ed, your keyboard is being connected through via Bluetooth, not Wi-Fi.
No, it's a Logitech Wi-Fi dongle. Computer didn't have it. No, the computer doesn't have Bluetooth, so it can't be Bluetooth.
So the keyboard is connected through Wi-Fi to your computer?
Yes, a Logitech dongle. Got a combo keyboard and mouse, and the computer didn't have Bluetooth, so it's close to the dongle.
That's not Wi-Fi. That's a proprietary thing.
Yeah, but it's the same frequency as Wi-Fi, 2.4 gigahertz. Yeah.
Well,
but
yeah,
but there's interference. There's interference on it. So.
Okay.
I think this is Kevin Beauregard. Ed, I think that on the router for a 2.4 gigahertz network, there are multiple channels that can be used. And I do agree with you that I think it is conceivable that there's interference based on your experience. But I think that there are multiple channels, and you can, I think, set the router to use different parts of that band of the 2.4 gigahertz. Because I think that 2.4 gigahertz actually has like a big chunk of Wi-Fi or frequency, and I think they get divided up into smaller sections. So my thought is maybe the Logitech 2.4 gigahertz, because I use Logitech Wi-Fi dongles on stuff I do too. And so it could be that if you took the router and said, I want to use channel 7 or channel 14 within the 2.4 gigahertz band, maybe that would be far enough away from the Wi-Fi, the wireless dongle. Somebody else said it's not Wi-Fi. The term isn't Wi-Fi, it's wireless. But so when you talk about keyboards and stuff, so but it does use the same frequency. But I think you can use a different band within that frequency range, I think.
Well, I guess I could have experimented with that, but oh, by the way, 2.4 gigahertz and Wi-Fi, the channels are overlapping, so there's not separate channels. On 5.0, they are separate frequency channels. So
yeah, I remember I said in the presentation that the 2.5 gigahertz had 11 channels.
And they're overlapping.
Yeah, they're overlapping, and the ones that your best bet might be using channel 1 or channel 11, because usually the default they were saying was channel 6. But I said something about the overlapping.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I tried to change the channel on the Wi-Fi or not, but there's definitely interference there. Like I hit the key on the new keyboard, and maybe I had to hit it 20 times before I get a response from it. So there's some kind of interference on there. But also I used to, even when I got the dual band gateway, some devices insisted on going down to 2.4, even though they're capable of 5. So I split it off into 2 different SSIDs and forced the devices that capable onto 5, and so that eliminate the problems I have with my keyboard. So
well, remember that the 5 gigahertz band is going to have the shortest range, so that plays a factor in what the connectivity is. But Ed, thank you. I was unaware of a Wi-Fi keyboard connecting to a computer. That's the first time I've heard of that.
Oh, come on.
No, serious. I've never.
I talk about my wireless Logitech 320 all the time.
But I always thought it was. I thought it was Bluetooth. I thought it was Bluetooth.
I know. That's what they're advertised as in the box. Okay.
They're
Peter
not
Hess.
Bluetooth and they're not Wi-Fi. They're a separate channel, but it happens to be in the 2.4 gigahertz range, so it can cause interference with Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Over to Peter Hess from Dayton.
Thank you very much. We have hybrid meetings, hybrid general meetings. We had one just this past Tuesday, and one of the problems we have, I'm working out the kinks along the line, but one that remains is that we're using the restaurant's Wi-Fi, which is slow and unreliable. So we're looking for recommendations on a Wi-Fi hotspot. Now we're along the interstate, so we probably have all the phone systems. We're probably going to be okay there. But we're looking for a Wi-Fi hotspot that will be reliable, so as many as 10 connections can stay connected. 10 computers can stay connected.
Well, if you have someone that's willing to use their hotspot on their phone, that would probably work.
Yeah, that's one possibility, and I just don't want to run somebody's minutes up. If
offer to pay their bill for the minutes. That's what I told the group in Hawaii. You got plenty of money in the bank, I bet.
We have a little money to work with, and that's why I'm not afraid of buying them.
The other thing, Peter, you might go to just buy a hotspot from your from a provider that, you know, like Bounce, well, not Bounce, but there is a Bounce IP, and then there's a couple others that sell those things, and you could use that.
Well, you're talking about T-Mobile or Verizon,
T-Mobile,
or AT&T. I just thought that somebody might have a recommendation on a good Wi-Fi hotspot.
All of that depends on what works in that particular location. So find out who has the best Wi-Fi or the best reception.
Thank you.
Would that be asking the people in the meeting room in the restaurant the best reception they're getting?
Yeah, they will. Well, if they have a Wi-Fi connection and they can turn their phone into a hotspot, yeah, we could check. But right now, we don't seem to have a problem with any of them. We've tested Verizon and we've tested AT&T. Doesn't seem to be a problem. I don't know of anybody that's using T-Mobile yet. But like I say, it's near an interstate. The back of the restaurant faces an interstate, so we're not worried about a reliable connectivity as far as that's concerned. We just need I was just looking for a good hotspot.
Our club.
John Jackson, you're on.
Yeah, we had a whole long drawn out battle to try to get Wi-Fi at our meeting location, and I did a survey around the neighborhood to see if there's anybody close by. We were looking at satellite or all this other stuff, and then I got an Android that had a hotspot with it. And just before that, we purchased one of those little MiFi things from Virgin Mobile, and that just plugged in, and it was like $30 of whatever it was a month. I can't remember, so long ago. And then we jumped to the access point through the phone, and I have another meeting location where we use that over there. You know, I have to remember to get my phone out of the window because the breakfast place we go to has kind of feeble public Wi-Fi. But it's a real challenge. It was back 10 plus years ago where we had to get some kind of deal with the park district where they gave us a real trickle, but it was way better than showing static pictures of the internet, which is what our option was without the internet. So anything in a storm, and we evolved into that.
And what group are you with?
That was originally the Fox Valley PC Association, and then
I
was a president. Then we had now I'm with CCS, Chicago Computer Society West Chapter.
I thought your name was familiar from back in the day.
Yeah, it was.
Way back in the day.
We got one of those awards for helping out the community too. So that
Sure
was
did.
appreciated.
Yep, I was sorry to see you guys go because you were a neat group.
Well, after 10 years of being president, no one else wanted to step up. So we ended up having kind of like monthly or quarterly coffee clashes somewhere.
Social time. Good to see
Yep.
you. Over to
thank you.
Carol Picard from Midland Computer Club.
Yeah, I have, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a Karma Go hotspot. I've had it for several years, so I'm grandfathered into their program. I'm not sure their current pricing. And I think it uses the Sprint network, but I've used it in a variety of places. And although we couldn't use it when we were meeting because we were inside a school administration building, in inner meeting rooms, and all the rooms were cement. I mean, it was a cement structure. But, I've used it at home when my internet's been down, and I've used it a variety of other places. But again, I don't know, what a new one costs and what their gigabyte usage is. I tend to buy it when it's on sale, and I use it so seldom. I think I have like 29 gigabytes right now. And I do pay, because it's a grandfathered in, I pay $2.95 just to keep the keep the service, $2.95 a month, and then I buy the gigabytes separately.
Do we have any other people who would like to raise their hands? And I would like to make a comment about the chat box. When you put just in the specs and the chat box, I don't know what you're talking about. And I know you're doing it during whatever the discussion is at that particular time, but there's no frame of reference. So when I, send out the chat box stuff, I'm not going to include that. So if you put in a comment like that, just put a 2 or 3 words, what you're referencing would be helpful. Thank you. Any more raising of hands?
I have a few comments in my chat. I will include the answers to those in what we send out.
58.
Pardon?
New ones.
Oh, well, I have, I think 6 here. Well, I'll be busy.
Yeah,
Thank you
I
so
was
much.
channeling that to you. You darn well will be busy.
Not a problem. It'll be fun.
Just don't forget to wake up in the morning.
Yeah, like you don't have anything else to do. Anyway, if we don't have any more raised hands, and that works so beautifully because I know it shows different in the participation box, but I just go on my screen. Everybody goes up to the left, and I try to remember the order you guys came in. It's kind of like lining up in school to go to lunch and stuff like that, although my preschoolers never had to do that. So I'm going to put it over to John to close this out. And thank you so very much, Bill. Lots of good comments about the overall, and you went into great detail. I do also have to share with you, if you get up and walk away, I'm going to stop your video. And I've done that with 2 people who kept getting up and walking out. That's one of the distracting things that we ask people not to do.
I'm sorry,
In addition-
I'm sitting on a,
No, I wasn't
I'm
talking
sitting on
about
a
you.
stool and I was getting uncomfortable.
You just
I had
happened
to
to do
change,
that one.
I had to change positions.
Yeah. Well, at least you didn't fall off. I was saying that, and darn it, you get up and turn around like you're dancing. But that's very distractive. So if you're going to leave your screen, stop your video. Because I found when I do that, they never share their video again. And we do like to see people. Over to you, John Kennedy, and thank you much for all of your tech stuff today.
Wow, what another great workshop that we've had. This ends February, but the good news is we come back next month with 4 of the 5 Wednesdays with workshops every Wednesday except for the first Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern. You'll be getting the signups and registrations for that. And so we want to invite you for that. And as just a clarification that make sure if you haven't put your name in, we don't just send it out to anybody who's here today. We have to match them up with the registration, and the people who didn't show up today, they don't get it anyway. So thanks everybody for attending. We'll be back next month. Everybody keep safe.